Hello everyone, thank you guys for tuning into another video. In today's video, we're going to talk about Final Fantasy XVI. Now, as you all know, I love Final Fantasy. It's one of my favorite series. Final Fantasy XVI is one of my favorite entries. And I can definitely admit that the lack of updates for its sales are a bit concerning. We know that it shipped 3 million units within the first week of its launch, and now let me explain something with shipped numbers. The way shipped works, those are physical copies shipped to retailers. So on Square Enix's end, they're good. They've technically, Square Enix is technically sold through their 3 million. Now it is up to those retailers to sell through 3 million. So when you see a shipped number, that doesn't necessarily mean sold through. So when they say shipped, that means that literally physical copies have been shipped to retailers. Retailers have ordered X amount of copies. Square Enix is good because they have been paid for those copies, so they're not too concerned about it. And in some cases, it can vary on how that works out. And it's also very difficult for a retailer to give those copies back. It really doesn't work like that. In some cases, maybe, but it is a very difficult thing. So it shipped those 3 million copies. Now, that's fine and dandy. It was only on PS5, obviously a smaller install base, and we can go into detail with that too. But there was a recent interview slash, I would say it was more of a briefing with Square Enix, and there was a comment that was made. One of the analysts there, Yasuda, apparently said that he talked to Square Enix's CEO, and the CEO stated that Final Fantasy XVI sold through 3.5 million units. Now, this raised a lot of red flags. People were like, wait a minute, this is kind of strange. Like, that's not a lot. That's almost 2 years from release. That's with 2 DLCs and PC. Now, here's the thing. When any information comes from Japan and it's being translated, there's always room for error, so please keep that in mind. Whether the analyst, leaker, person is super credible, if you're not from Japan and you do not speak Japanese and you're translating, there's room for error. Always. Always, always, always. That's not on the person who is making the statement, on that person's credibility. That is just on the translation and how it gets translated. Now, a lot of people ran with this saying, oh my gosh, how could Final Fantasy XVI only do so little in the amount of time? What a flop, this, that, and the fourth. Then we get an update. Yasuda, who shared this figure, is now saying that that number is Toyo Security's own estimate and not from Square Enix, meaning that this 3.5 million units figure is probably off. So, there you go. Now, here's the thing with this. Obviously, there was no way that Final Fantasy XVI only sold 3.5 million copies within almost 2 years of its release. But that also doesn't mean it's not that much higher than that either. I would estimate Final Fantasy XVI sales numbers probably between anywhere from 4 to 6 million at this point, which you could say is good, you could say is bad. It really depends on the scope and the budget of the project. Square Enix is likely has seen a return on investment with this, but still a bit concerning because sales are definitely declining for sure. But that just goes to show that when anything is being translated, there's always room for error. I very much doubt that it sold 3.5 million. It's possible it took a while for retailers to sell through that initial shipment, and a second shipment could have came in at any point in time, but I'm very skeptical that it sold 3.5. I just don't really see how that would be. Final Fantasy has definitely lost relevance in the market for sure, and there's no room for argument there. That's pretty much on paper, but I definitely don't see it. I mean, that's pretty catastrophic if it sold 3.5 million. And even then, if we're looking at between 4 and 6, it's not a huge difference, but it goes to show just be cautious of translations like that. There's always room for error. And what I personally did was I saw some users on X who were from Japan and who were stating that there is some mistranslation in this, which I didn't run with that and necessarily believe them, but it piqued my curiosity into how valid this statement was. Even if the analyst is credible, it's more so of how this is being translated from one to another, from one to another, from one to another. And then even on Reset Era, when I first saw it, the user who initially reported on it had like 4 different edits of, oh, this number could be off, it could be this, not even sure how this was asked, when this was asked, who this was asked. Final Fantasy XVI wasn't even brought up in this meeting. So there was just a ton of stuff going on, and I was like, I don't really know what I'm believing here, but there is room for error, and that's enough for me to wait for an official announcement from Square Enix to know what Final Fantasy XVI has actually sold. So, thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next video.